Technology isn't just a part of our everyday lives anymore. It's become a frontier for global powers, with India right in the mix. So why not join the conversation? Take the Technopolitics survey created by researchers at the Takshashila Institution. It's just 10 simple questions, but your answers could help shape India's strategy in navigating the fast changing world of high tech geopolitics. Your voice matters, so let's make it heard.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. I am MIheer Karandikar. I am a researcher at Takshashila interested in economic policy, and I'm your host today. I have with me two guests here. So Sridhar first. Sridhar Krishna is a senior scholar at the Takshashila Institution. Before joining Takshashila, he was a managing director at Accenture's AI practice. Hi Sridhar.
Hey, hi Milind. Thanks for having me.
And then we have Arindam, who is a research analyst working in high-tech geopolitics program at Takshashila. They both have a new paper on AI and jobs, where they kind of try to find out what effect AI will have on jobs and have a new approach to finding this out. So welcome to this episode, first of all. Before we kind of go into the main topic, can I have one of you just explain how AI became prominent as a new technology in the world, and chatbots just started to come up after the pandemic, and how it gained prominence, just briefly.
Yeah, I guess in general we can look at it from the perspective of industrial revolutions that have happened in the past, that have led to the technology getting diffused, and then that leading to jumps in the economic productivity of nations, right? So similarly, and this is to borrow from Jeffrey Ding's book on GPT diffusion, also general purpose technologies diffusion, where he says that there are particular technologies like in the current industry, if we consider our artificial intelligence or generative AI as sort of a general purpose technology, that diffusion into multiple sectors and the fact that it is continuously evolving and at a fast pace, that's what leads to its impact across different sectors rising fast enough, right? So even if you look at AI in general, that has been there around for some time, right? But the talk around AI impacting jobs has risen more in the current context where we have generative AI, right? And that could be due to some factors which are peculiar to generative AI, in the sense that more of it is open to people using it in a much more easier fashion. It's abstracted out the technical parts of machine learning and AI to make it much more accessible for people. So that could have led to the fears. We can talk about how whether they're unfounded or not, but there are fears of AI impacting jobs, and I think that's where generative AI in general has created that fear. But Sridhar.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is a disruptive technology. And like any disruptive technology, it will impact jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the question is whether it will impact jobs. The question is whether it'll impact jobs to the point where most of us will be unemployed. Right? I think that's the real fear.
Yeah.
And there are, I think, lessons from history have told us that every industrial revolution, there are a bunch of Luddites who believe that, jobs will be lost, this technology will take away my job, and I may not be able to find a new job, etc. But the reality is, at least for first 2-3 industrial revolutions, they have created new jobs.
Right.
The number of people who have got jobs, the global GDP growth after post these industrial revolutions has been dramatic. If you look at some data, you'll find that over the last 1,000 years, global GDP was growing at some 0.2, 0.3%.
Right.
Then, subsequent to industrial revolutions, and now it's sort of growing at about 3.5% per annum. So I think there is a significant growth to GDP on account of technological transformational technologies,
right?
And AI will definitely not be very different from that perspective.
Yeah.
while GDP may grow, I think there are some papers which sort of talk about the fact that the gap between capital and labor will also increase, and which means it may not increase incomes at the same rate at which it increases returns to those who deploy the capital to perform these things. Those fears are all real, but the point is that. But we don't know what we don't know. Human beings are always capable of finding new and interesting things to do to keep ourselves engaged and employed. So something new will come up.
Yeah. Thanks for the great, dissemination of what we want to do here. The Luddites word is very interesting because I think it comes from the industrial revolution, first industrial revolution, right? Where people were fearful of the steam engine also. So it's continued to the computers, to internet, and now even to AI.
Yeah, in a sense that opposition or fear of machines has always been there, right? Taking over. But in a sense, AI might be a little different from that because of the pace at which it is developing currently, and that's where I guess the fears are there coming out.
Right.
Yeah, so when you're talking about Luddites, I think it's interesting. I mean, for those, it might be interesting story for people who have not studied the history of industrial revolutions. So there is this person called Neil Ludd.
Okay.
Now, Neil Ludd, nobody knows whether it was a real character or was it a fictitious one, made up one. But Neil Ludd is supposed to have, when the spinning jenny was invented during the Industrial Revolution, it threatened the lives of people who are weaving by hand. Right? So these guys went in and they're supposed to have gone into various factories and broken those spinning jennies. So they break those things, and then to the point where the UK made it an offense punishable by death if people went into factories and broke these machines. So it took a while before those laws got changed, but it's a real thing that at that point. Then subsequently, and but then the reality was that new jobs got created, the cost of fabric came down. So what happened? I mean, what happens when you have a machine that increases productivity? Let's first understand that. Right? So when you have a machine that increases productivity, you find that the cost of producing that good goes down dramatically.
Right.
When the cost of producing that good goes down, demand and supply laws help you to understand that, like the price elasticity thing explains that
demand will increase.
Demand will increase. Demand will increase because, now it's a much cheaper. It's a cheaper product. So for goods that people had always aspired to but couldn't afford, now increased productivity helps you to sort of increase demand. But let's say food or something. I mean, like food is. Most people have food to eat. There are a few people who don't have food to eat. If you lower the cost of production of food, there will be fewer people going hungry. So the demand for that will go up. But it may not increase exponentially. Like like earlier people would have like 4 sets of clothes. Now they have like maybe 20.
Right.
So because cost of clothing has come down relative to other things. So I think that's a thing which you should look for when you're looking at AI and its impact also. Not all AI is going to sort of take away jobs. Some might just increase demand for those services.
Right.
To take an example from India, right? So when we had the computerization of banks that was introduced in, I guess, in the 80s, right? There was opposition from bank unions and bank employees, but then we still persisted with it, and now we see the benefits of higher computerization in banks, right? And
accessibility.
Sure, some people in that duration might have had to transition to other jobs, learn new skills. So that's where reskilling and upskilling comes in. But the skills that were in vogue at that time, they have now they have become obsolete, but there are new skills related to usage of computers and all of the peripherals that are required to run a computerized system, right? So those skills are now something that are in demand. So skills will change, and it's important to reskill and upskill in that sense.
So I like the paper in the way that it kind of tries to break down the big fear of AI, right? So it tries to look in very specific instances where AI will replace tasks, will do tasks better, will make it more efficient, etc. So my next question would be, what tasks does AI do well, and how do you kind of try to find out what tasks AI does well? So what is the framework that you use to do so?
So I read a paper sometime back which sort of listed it out even better than we do in terms of what tasks AI does well today. like it does things like recognition, right? So it can recognize things, it can recognize patterns, it can recognize objects, it can recognize, so for instance, identifying cancer in MRI scans, etc.
Right.
So those kind of things it can do very well, right? The other thing that it can do very well is classification. It can recognize patterns and then like it can put them into little buckets and say like, okay, here's one type of thing, there's another type, and classify them very well. So I think that's something that they can do. AI can look at past data and can predict future outcomes at speeds and efforts which human beings might find very hard.
Right.
So I think that's something that, like Google Flights predicting flight delays even before official announcements.
Okay.
So I think things like that are interesting. Then you have, they can recommend. So based on predictions, AI can provide recommendations on subsequent actions.
Yeah.
So they can say, I remember we were, when I was at Accenture, we were looking at some opportunities with some police force, etc., to look at how do you do crowd control using AI.
Okay.
Can you look at the way crowds are moving? Can you take images of that and then predict whether this is like just crowd celebrating or is it like
going to turn violent?
Is it going to turn? Is it like some chance of turning violent?
Right.
So I think those kind of things are important too.
Okay.
Things that it can do. Then it can also do. You want to add?
So
there are a few other
basically, in a
areas
paper
which I
also we
think-
have tried to list down categories of tasks, for example, that AI can do probably. There's data processing and analysis. There's like repetitive mundane tasks that that you can automate, and you can not just automate but use AI to do it. And there's complex calculations. There's facial and image recognition that Sridhar also just talked about. And then there's prediction and forecasting. For example, you could use it to some systems are already in place to in the fintech sector, for example, to predict frauds, right? And some sort of predictive pattern around frauds, and then try to prevent it, right? And then there are obviously personalization and recommendation systems. The idea that we put forth in our paper is we shouldn't look at jobs per se, we should look at the tasks that compose that particular job, right? So it's not enough to say a software developer's job will get affected. It's better to look at what tasks does a software developer do, right? A junior developer, for example, could be doing software code writing. There could be code refactoring that he's doing. There could be automated testing where AI could help. So these are discrete tasks,
smaller tasks
that probably it's better to look at these smaller discrete tasks and whether AI tech is mature enough, and there are a bunch of other parameters on which we can evaluate whether that task is at the risk of being impacted by AI.
Yeah. Can you kind of expand on those parameters?
Sure. So in a paper also, what we have done is we've sort of created a funnel, right? At the top of the funnel, there are first you identify the tasks that AI can do. If say a company is trying to utilize our framework, for example, so then the company can find out what are the relevant tasks that a particular department, for example, in their company is trying to do. Then you put it through the funnel and you look at things like the first part of the funnel is you look at what is the return on investment for that particular technology in that particular task, and that the ROI can be not just in terms of like cost. It could be in terms of time. It could be in terms of number of people. It could be some other parameters that the relevant entity can identify. Then you match it against the tech maturity of the technology itself, right? Whether it is at a highly advanced maturity level, and then you map these two, right? You map the ROI versus tech maturity and see there could be different quadrants. We have written about that in the paper, but I will not go into too much details in there. You can have different categorizations.
So to give an example, for instance, right? So if something is high tech maturity and high ROI, it seems a no-brainer that such tasks you would shortlist for AI deployment.
To replace, right?
So those tasks you would do. Those would be the first set of tasks that you would consider for deployment. But if something is, on the other hand, low AI tech maturity, but potentially high ROI, then you would sort of, you might use human plus AI, or you may use like, you're not yet sure of the technology, how well it
you can drive investment
into AI. You might also wait for improvement to this. You may augment human capacity in doing it. I think a lot of the tasks that will happen first will also go where, like, human plus AI route. Very few will actually go all AI immediately. Most tasks will go human plus AI. Most jobs will be done by, so like we said, it's only the tasks that are being done, which means there's always going to be a human who's job it is to do all these tasks, who's using AI to do one part of it.
Simplify.
One part of their job. So that's something. You want to talk about the next part of the funnel?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So once you've done this, right? So once you've done, you know what AI can do, then you've gone down and said, okay, what's the ROI and AI maturity? You do a matrix and you put that in those 4 quadrants and take decisions along that. Then you look at harm and explainability. So what is harm? Harm is like, what decisions can this AI take that could be harmful to the user? Potentially harmful. Or let's say it's a judge taking decisions on like, how should you decide on this case?
Right.
Like, should I send this person
to jail? That can have ramifications.
That is huge. And if that person does it wrong, so the idea behind harm is if the AI goes wrong, then the harm cost can be very high.
Right.
So, for instance, if my AI is like, frying a puppet for me, what's the worst thing that will happen? I'll eat it, it'll be a little kacha, and I decide I won't eat it.
Yeah.
So the harm is very low.
Right.
But if the AI is deciding whether to send this person to jail and for how long, then it
can have great ramifications.
Big ramifications.
So, or like if deciding diagnosing a patient based on
correct. Yeah. So diagnosis may be all right to some extent, but like the treatment, but the actual surgery itself, conducting the surgery, you might like not say like just so. How do you use human? Where do you use human plus AI, and where do you use just AI, and where do you not use AI? I think that's what we're trying to do using the funnel.
Okay.
And we're saying if something is low on the harm and high on explainability, that's another important thing. There are important. If a task is important, if the potential harm is high, then at least you want it to be highly explainable. You need to be able to say this AI is such that we can explain it, we can verify whether it's right or not before you can sort of use it. But if the harm is low and explainability is high, then it's obvious that you use AI for it. But if the harm is high and explainability is low, it's obvious you will not use AI.
Yeah.
And there in between could be where you use human in the loop in order to do it. But having said that, let's say now technically, it looks like commercially it's viable to use this AI technology.
Yeah.
The technology is mature enough to give you fairly good, consistent outputs. It does not cause too much harm. It's fairly explainable in terms of what it does. That doesn't necessarily mean that this AI will get deployed.
Okay.
There could still be other implementation barriers. Like, for instance, the people whose jobs might get impacted by this could be large in number, could be a cohesive group, could be capable of like getting together and saying, no, I don't want this to be done. At the very least, they can help in delaying the deployment of such AI.
Okay.
So there are instances where driverless cars, etc. There are people who say that, hey, no, I don't want driverless cars to be implemented in our country because I think drivers will lose their jobs. There are politicians who make statements like that, and they have, right? So I think those are the kind of things that will happen before AI gets deployed. That's the funnel as we see it.
Yeah,
and the idea there is there'll be such groups who will protest probably, and the way out would be to have proper dialogue with them. Look at their reskilling, how their skills could be better deployed in some other task maybe, and so those are the kind of negotiations and bargains that we need to make instead of push it down the throat, right? So that could be one way.
And all this is going to mean that while AI tech might appear to be very capable today, the amount of time it'll take for AI to be actually deployed to make a noticeable impact on the number of jobs, etc., is going to be a little
high,
a little way down the road.
Right. Yeah. So Darren Acemoglu, the recent Nobel Prize winner, he has a great paper called Simple Macroeconomics of AI, right? So, I mean, this is, of course, research based on the US, where he tries to identify what percentage of tasks in the US, AI can affect and what effect that will have on total factor productivity and then the GDP, right? So that's a simple calculation after you find total factor productivity. So he kind of, uses similar basis. So he says, what task will be automated by AI? What can be totally replaced? In which tasks can efficiency gains and labor productivity increases, be seen? And which tasks can be automated a little bit, but not fully, right? So these are the kind of framework he uses. And he divides them into easy and hard tasks, right? So easy tasks are one that have a good mapping between what action you want and your desired outcome. So say I want an AI to say, okay, I have these notes. Now this is very, jumbled up. Just sort them out for me in a manner in which, they are divided into topics. That's an easy task, right? So it has an action as a desired outcome. But then I say, okay, now write a report based on this for, what the economic outlook will be or India. It can't do, because there is no, correct me if I'm wrong here, that so that kind of division he does on tasks, and he predicts that there will not be more than a 0.66% increase in total factor productivity over 10 years. So that doesn't look like he says it's not trivial, but that's not what it's you might feel if you consume a lot of media which says, okay, there's a lot of fear about AI. So
I think it varies based on who you ask and what they're looking at,
right?
And we always overestimate what technology can do in the next 1 or 2 years. Right? We think Gen AI has come, everything will happen. Next 2 years, all our jobs will be lost. We overestimate that.
Yeah.
But we also almost always underestimate what the impact of a transformative technology will be in 10 years. Right? So I'm not of the school of thought who believes that the change will be quite insignificant. That will be the total factor productivity will just go up by some 0.55%. And the number of jobs lost will be quite small as a consequence. And therefore AI deployment will be very limited. I think AI will become quite ubiquitous. I think we will see AI being used like we use the internet today. AI will be used by most people to sort of improve their productivity. And I see that definitely being all over the place. Right? Everybody will be using AI in some shape or form,
right,
for doing almost every job that they do. But within that, there will be some tasks that they delegate to AI, some tasks that they use AI for, and so on. So what will it mean in terms of total? There are estimates that I've seen which talk about in this 10 years for overall global GDP to go up by $15 trillion. So which is almost 15% of the global GDP.
Yeah.
So you can have something which varies from something as very insignificant to something so high. It's very hard to predict
judge right now.
Something. What we can do is be aware of what AI can do. Look at your job, look at your role, what you do, how can AI help you to do your job better? Keep thinking of that, and also figure out what are the skills that you need to learn. And I think we can't be hesitant saying, oh, this is just too high tech for me, I won't try to learn it. It's got too much math in it or something to that effect, right? All that I think is not right. I think we need to we need to play with technology, learn how to use it, play with things like ChatGPT, Notebook LM, and so on, and do stuff. I think that's true.
And I guess I agree with the easy and hard task
classification.
And that sort of ties into our paper also, right? Because, for example, take an example from the information technology sector, right? There's probably code generation which is fairly, the code output that you get out of a code generation AI, right? That's pretty much good enough, right? And it's just that when you bring all that code together to build an integrated system, that's where you will probably require some person to review whether the design is correct, whether the architecture is correct, right? Similarly, say there's a UX designer who's designing a UX, right? It's not just about how the look and feel is, right? It's also some insights about user behavior and all, which probably AI may not be able to bring out that well, right? So over there you'll require. So these tasks could be classified as maybe hard, and where you'll probably require human insight also, right? So as we have written, right, there are tasks that will get replaced, and there are tasks that will require augmentation by human insight, right? So if we take care of this thing, then we probably know better what will be the transition process.
There could be another friction to AI deployment, I think, which is also around energy usage. I think AI requires huge amounts of energy, and so and at a time when the whole world is trying to go green, how are we going to find the energy costs of deploying AI could go up if it's priced properly, and in which case that could add as a deterrent.
Right.
So that's why there's a lot of research going on in nuclear fusion and other areas which could help AI firms use energy more effectively from better sources and all that. But it's all still in the future.
So AI is playing kind of this long game, right? So in which it started, people are started deploying it now, using it now. But as it learns to do more and more tasks, as you teach it to do more and more tasks. So I think there was an example in like kind of pop culture where it says that AI can write poems or like haikus, but it right now can't write novels because there's not enough data to train it on novels, right? So there's another kind of, so there's this multiple
it can write a novel. You may not like reading it, you may not enjoy reading it, is a different matter. It can write something. It can make up stories. I mean, there is no limit to how long a document it needs to write, right? So it can write long form stuff, but the point is that
it needs to be coherent.
It should be coherent. It should not hallucinate so much that nobody wants to read it. But it may not be good at all.
So will the kind of say graph of how much jobs AI will affect over time be like a logarithmic curve? So in which like a snowball effect, right? So the more kind of tasks it starts to say, it starts with a small say ball in your hand. You roll it down the slope, hilly slope filled with snow. It gains more and more snow. It becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So will that be how it replaces jobs, or is there another kind of way to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look at it, I think if you look at the number of jobs that will get impacted by it, I think that will be very high. But how will it, number of jobs that will get replaced by AI may grow in the way that you're talking.
Right.
Yeah, but when you look at the tasks, if you look at the Future of Jobs report from the World Economic Forum published in 2023, and IMF's report on jobs, etc., and AI, you find that they're all talking about 35-40% of the jobs in some shape or form will be impacted by AI. Now, some will be possibly impacted in terms of you're able to, but all will be impacted in terms of you'll be able to do more, you'll be able to improve productivity and so on. Some might be new jobs that are get created because of AI. There'll be new types of jobs. That's another kind of thing, or new capabilities come into play which are using AI. So I think number of jobs impacted will not go from that curve that you're talking about, but I think the number of jobs replaced may happen that way. But then new jobs will get created. For instance, 65% of the jobs that we do today, that the world people are employed in today, did not exist in 1955. Right?
Yeah.
So, which means that new jobs will get created which don't exist. But it's not to belittle or to minimize the impact it might have on people who lose their jobs on account of whose jobs get, because they may not everybody may be able to easily acquire a new skill, may not have access to it and so on. So we need to find new and innovative ways by which people can acquire new skills. I think the biggest skill that people need to have going forward is the ability to acquire new skills and the ability to learn. The constant ability and willingness to learn new things is what will sort of help, is the only thing that you can do as an individual to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
I guess, and to help this out, I guess we'll require some innovative financial mechanisms also, right? Something that we've written about in a paper. Do you want to explain the career impact bonds? That,
So career impact bonds are innovative financial instruments. It's basically structured finance. You take, so people wanting to learn a new skill often don't know what skill to learn. They think their job's going to get disrupted. I want to learn a new skill. They don't know what skills to learn. They don't know where to learn it from. And they don't know how to pay for it. Right? And they may not have the money to pay for these skills. And even if they are willing to take a loan and somebody's willing to give them a loan, they worry that I might not be able to get another job that will give me enough income for me to be able to repay this loan. So career impact bonds are supposed to attempt to sort of fix this whole thing.
Yeah.
What they do is, like, if you're, let's say, take an example of somebody who's a machine operator in a factory and wants to learn how to fly drones, which can be used for delivery. Right. And now this machine operator earns like maybe 15,000 rupees a month or something. The training for this new drone flying skills might be costing you maybe 1 lakh of rupees.
Yeah.
This chap and it might take 3 months. So this person who's earning 15,000 rupees unlikely to have enough resources to be able to go out and pay 1 lakh of rupees, get that training. So he remains in that job till he loses that job, till like drones replace the work that he's doing. He might be driving a little truck in the material handling truck in the factory, and like suddenly drones have come in and they've replaced this thing, and he's no longer required. But the guy who can fly the drone is required.
Right.
So what do you do about that? So if you are able to give him an at-risk loan, which means that he gets to repay the loan only if he gets a job after that, then that'll help. But then the training company doesn't have unlimited liquidity, so it requires it will take all these pool of loans and get them refinanced with a small special purpose vehicle, which will then structure these bonds and sell it. Now, because it's a structured finance, you can sell it you have different risk profiles. So you can sell a low risk tranche to an investor and a high risk tranche to a company's CSR or to government, etc., for funding. So I think that's the kind of model that will work.
This kind of innovation will need to happen.
That kind of innovation we need at scale to be able to train huge number of people will need to get upskilled in the coming years. And unless we have a well-defined market for these kind of bonds, it might become difficult. You can't rely on somebody just doing some charity
you can't depend on it.
Can't depend just on that.
Yes.
And like from a public policy research perspective, right? If we were to think of what could be governmental interventions at all, if at all anything is required here from a government perspective, what are probably the market failures here that could make it necessary to have government intervention here. So something like innovative financial mechanisms, they probably would require some enabling regulatory framework which can probably help these financial mechanisms, right? If we look at the three things that governments do, like regulate, finance, or produce, right? So out of these, if at all, I could think of somewhere where in the funnel that governments could come in is in the harm versus explainability thing, right? Where probably they could specify some standards, not very intrusive standards, not very aggressive standards, but like something that helps to define in a little more clear manner what could be the
potential harm
here, right? So in my opinion, as of now, it should be a very not a very hands-on or very involved approach, but there are these few areas in which probably public policy can come in.
All right. Any concluding thoughts from both of you?
No. So as our paper says, like let's not look at the jobs as such. Let's look at let's break it down into tasks and then apply various parameters and then look at what could be the impact. And reskilling and upskilling becomes very important because it will not be jobs as such that will get impacted. It is the skills, and it is the skills required to do a particular task. And in that sense, being able to acquire those skills is important.
While in the short run, AI is not going to make as big an impact as people are fearing, in the long run, there definitely will be a very significant impact. That's one thing that I've got. It'll however take time. That I agree, but it'll happen. So there is a need for patience and acceptance of the changes that are coming. So first of all, you must accept that change is coming.
And then you can see what you can do.
What can you do as an individual? Continuous learning, upskilling, reskilling will be the normal way to live. You can't think that, okay, now till the age of 22, 23, I will study and then I will just take up a job and I'll work there till I retire at the age of 60 or 65 or whatever. That's not an option.
So be more dynamic. Yeah.
It has to be more dynamic. Your jobs will get disrupted. The tasks that you do technology will change. You will find that the work that you're doing is not doesn't have a market. Machines can do the job way better. Then you have to find different things to do. A constant quest for new things to do. A constant quest for things to learn. I think that's what's going to make all the difference.
And the pace of change will not be as slow as it was in the previous industrial revolutions that we had, right? Because there are some peculiar characteristics of AI which make it much more fast-paced, much more agile, right? So the tasks that probably would have taken, say, 10 years earlier to get obsolete now would probably become obsolete in a much in a faster manner. So that's that time horizon probably will be a little less. It will be a little smaller, but yeah, we need to keep that in mind.
All right. Thank you for that. So please do read their paper. We'll link it in the show notes and also from the Takshashila website. And thank you so much for joining us. See you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.